The Price of Fear. Brought to you by Vincent Price.
Hello there. Do you own a cat? Or rather, I should say, does a cat own you? Doesn't it strike you as strange that despite centuries of domestication, cats have never really lost their independence, their ruthlessness? To cats, life is still the lore of the jungle. Just try taking liberties with your cat, be he never so tame, and you'll soon be put in your place. I've always had a healthy respect for cats, despite that one time when I was forced to... Oh, but let me tell you about it. I think I'll call the story Cat's Cradle. Several years ago, I was making a movie in Germany, and there was some sort of hold-up during shooting, a tiresome and boring state of affairs that happens all too often, and I found myself with some days on my hands, so I decided to visit some of the beautiful old castles of Bavaria. High on my itinerary was Sonderberg in Franconia, near the Württemberg border. Sonderberg tends to get overlooked by the main tourist trade. Yet it is one of the most complete examples I know of a medieval market town which has survived comparatively intact. I checked in at one of the local hotels late one afternoon, and while they were getting my room ready, I sat down at one of the little tables near the door and ordered a drink, a large tankard of their local beer, actually. At the next table sat a young couple, whispering intently, but their voices were angry and out of control, and as I sat enjoying my beer, it was impossible not to overhear that they were deep in some childish tiff.
Beth, for God's sake, stop talking nonsense.
How dare you say it's nonsense?
It is nonsense, and you know it. I never even looked at the damn woman.
I don't know how you can be so callous. Did you see how disgustingly fat she was?
I tell you, I didn't notice her at all.
Liar.
Oh, shut up.
Oh, God, what a start to married life.
Oh, look, Beth, you're tired. I'm tired. It's all been a strain. Let's not say things we'll be sorry for. Let's have an early night.
The next best thing to your German Hausfrau.
Oh, for the last time, I didn't fancy her. If you're going to carry on like this every time I look at another woman, you'd better tear my ruddy eyes out.
Ah, so now you admit you looked at her.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
The young man glanced uneasily in my direction, obviously wondering if I'd become an involuntary eavesdropper. Of course I had. And I certainly had no intention of making myself scarce. Isn't this a charming town?
Yes, charming.
Delightful.
Are you on vacation?
No.
Yes. That is,
We're on our honeymoon.
Oh, are you? Are you indeed? Well, what an ideal place to spend it.
We haven't exactly succumbed to its charms yet.
We've only just arrived.
Well, give it time. Sonderberg is a step back into the past. It takes a while before its charm begins to work.
It's certainly quiet enough.
I was here once years ago, and I always promised myself a return visit. Then it seemed like an oasis in a desert of insanity.
Yes, I suppose so.
Except, of course, that Sonderberg has had its own fair share of horrors, you know. Oh, that's good. Oh, what delightful beer this is. So refreshing.
Do go on, please.
Well, the castle, do you see it up on that rock?
Yes.
Look through the window there, see?
Oh, yes.
Well, that was taken over as a headquarters for the Inquisition. Oh, the poor wretches who were incarcerated and tortured up there.
I saw the castle as we drove in. It was beautiful, but it made me shudder.
It's not surprising. The Inquisition left several pleasant little mementos, all in as good a state of preservation as Sonderberg itself. You must visit the place while you're here. Well, that is, if you're not squeamish.
Squeamish?
Look, I've got an idea. Why don't we join up and go round the castle together tomorrow?
Well...
Please do. Oh, unless, that is, you're already busy.
Well, no, but...
We'd love it, wouldn't we, Beth?
Yes. Yes, of course we would.
At first, I couldn't understand the young man's enthusiasm. After all, a honeymoon is a honeymoon. Then it struck me that he needed a a defense mechanism, and I would be there to guard him from the kind of row that I'd stumbled upon just now. Well, at any rate, we agreed to meet in the hotel lobby at 10 o'clock in the morning. As events turned out, I needn't have worried about breaking the idyllic atmosphere, because as we were about to set off...
Good God, it can't be. Bryce, it's you. It really is.
Hello, Malcolm.
Now, what are you doing in this neck of the woods? Don't tell me they forced you out of the rat race at last.
Malcolm Rivers was one of the world's prize bores. If the first prize in a competition were a part in one of Malcolm's movies, the second prize would have been a part in 2 of Malcolm's movies.
Scouting locations, old son. You see that castle up there? That's just right for a new horror picture we've got. I'd love you to read it. It's a great script.
Malcolm, I'm on vacation. Can't we discuss this later, or better still see my agent, huh?
Oh, yeah, but look, just let me tell you.
At this point, our taxi arrived. It was as battered as its driver, but we had all agreed to leave our own transport behind. The trouble was, when Malcolm heard the driver announce that he had come for the castle party, he insisted on coming with us.
Castle? Well, you don't mean to say you're actually going there?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's great. I can actually show you where it all takes place while I'm telling you about it.
Malcolm,
Oh, come on, don't be so coy. You're worse than a virgin on a wedding night.
I just couldn't shake him off. You never could with Malcolm. That's how he'd hustled his way to the top. Now he attached himself to us like an incubus.
The film's all about the Sonderbergs. You know, the family, a sort of pageant of atrocity. I want to step back and look objectively at what each one did. Take Elisa, for instance.
Well, I can't speak for the others. I was doing my best not to listen. The castle, for those who don't know it, is built on an immensely steep rock dominating the town, and on its northern side is surrounded by a moat, which has long since been filled in. At the foot of the wall is a very pleasant garden with little sheltered seats. Sitting there is a good way of recovering from the rather overpowering tour round the castle. The girl was right. There still was a sinister aura clinging to the place, which even a hot and cheerful summer's morning couldn't entirely dissipate.
And they broke in and found the girl strung up by the wrists over the hot coals. Incredible story. Of course, we can't actually put all that into the picture, but we can imply a hell of a lot. You've got to admit it's a damn good commercial plot line. Now, that's why it's so important to get the feel of the place where it happened. We want to get right away from the studio look. Well, they can go out and shoot a police picture in real locations, or why not a horror picture? Now, the 7th Count was a real character. This you've got to hear. They say
Mr. Rivers, do you mind if we change the subject?
Huh?
My wife is feeling a bit faint.
That's too bad, Mrs. And we haven't even seen the torture tower yet. Now, say, would your lady wife like to wait for us out here? She could sit down there in the garden.
Oh, no, I don't want to miss anything. I'm quite all right. I think it was probably just that steep hill and the heat.
You go on, Malcolm. We'll catch up with you later.
No, I wouldn't dream of it. Stick together through thick and thin, that's my motto. I know, look at that.
Ah, isn't it sweet? It can't be more than 6 weeks old.
It was a tiny black kitten, which was playing with its mother near one of the seats in the garden just below us. The cat, a great sleek creature whose coat shone in the sun, lay stretched on the grass, and the kitten romped around near her. The mother would wave her tail for the kitten to try to clutch with its paw, or raise her feet to push the little one away as an encouragement to further efforts. It was a charming sight.
Beth has been on to me to buy her a cat as soon as we were married. Now I'll get no peace.
Oh, Jack, I'd like to take them both. I wonder who they belong to.
Oh, they're not strays, and that's for sure. Look at the condition of the mother's coat. Well, they probably belong to the castle.
It'd be great for the picture. Add a touch of atmosphere. Here, Puss. Come on, Puss.
Malcolm, leave them alone. They can't get up the wall anyway. It's far too steep.
Yes, you're right. Oh, look at the size of the mother. We don't grow cats like that in England. Now, wait just a minute. here we are.
What are you doing?
Well, I'll just throw this stone to attract their attention.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. You might hit the kitten.
Oh, not a chance. What do you take me for? I may produce movies, but I'm not all that bad. I'll just aim it so it lands near them. Make them look up. You ever seen the expression on a cat's face when it's startled? Well, watch.
Oh,
Good God, man, look what you've done.
I never meant to do that.
Maybe the wall wasn't as sheer as it looked. Maybe there was a concealed angle at its base which we couldn't see. Whatever the reason, Malcolm's aim wasn't as true as he thought. I truly believe that he only intended to startle those cats. But when he leaned over the wall and threw the stone, it landed with a sickening thud right on the kitten's head and shattered out its little brains there and then.
Oh, poor thing.
The mother cast a swift upward glance, and I saw her eyes flash like green fire as she stared for an instant at Malcolm Rivers. Then her attention was given to the kitten. After one quiver, it lay still, while a thin red trickle oozed from a gaping wound.
Oh, the poor thing.
Well, I wouldn't have had this happen for the world. I can't understand it.
Beth, darling.
The cat was assiduously licking the kitten's wound, and then suddenly she stopped. She must have realized that it was dead and that her ministrations were useless, for all at once she appeared to lose all interest in the pathetic little body. Instead, she looked again at Rivers, and in that look was all the concentration of primitive hate. Her green eyes blazed, and the blood which dabbled her mouth and whiskers made her look for all the world like an avenging fury. There, Malcolm, I hope you're satisfied. That's something for your horror film. And you have the consolation of knowing it's real blood and not vegetable dye.
Oh, don't rub it in. I feel bad enough as it is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Of course you do.
I love cats. I really do.
Although my outburst was a relief, I felt slightly ashamed. I realized how painfully vulnerable the man really was. I turned my attention to the cat. She was now attempting to claw her way up the wall. When this failed, she tried to launch herself into the air, eyes blazing, claws distended, and then she fell back.
Let's go on. I can't bear any more.
Do you want to go home? We can come back tomorrow.
I think a brandy would do you good. I think a brandy would do us all good.
No, I don't want to go back to the hotel. I want to see the castle. Let's go on.
In face of her obvious determination, there was nothing else we could do. At least the tour would divert her mind, or so we hoped. And we also hoped that Malcolm would be deterred from prattling on about his inane script. But no.
I really expect to pick up some great vibrations in the torture tower. It's just over there. You see, you can't expect to involve your audience unless you're involved yourself. Now that's the basic rule. You've got to be convinced. And that's why so many movies are just laughable. Nobody is convinced, least of all the makers. I remember one crazy scene. This will kill you. There was this...
As Malcolm laughed, I looked back at the cat. She, too, had heard, and her whole demeanor seemed to change. She no longer tried to jump or run up the wall, but instead began to lick and fondle the dead kitten as if it were alive. Then she took it in her mouth and began to follow us until we reached the limit of the wall's boundary. I thought I was the only one who noticed, but I was wrong.
Mr. Rivers, I know this may sound silly, but I think that cat means to do you harm.
Oh, now that I love. Oh, let's keep a sense of proportion about this. Well, I'm terribly sorry about what happened, but I refuse to avoid dark alleys over a damn cat. Besides, she probably has a litter of others under some bush.
Yes, Beth, I think you're being melodramatic.
Do you?
Look, Beth, are you sure you wouldn't rather call it a day?
Oh, for heaven's sake, stop fussing. I said I was all right, didn't I? Or are you trying to get rid of me?
Oh, now, don't start that again.
All I was trying to do was to give Mr. Rivers a perfectly reasonable warning.
I think all are afraid. Well, here's the tower entrance. Shall we go in? I tried to sound unconcerned, but somewhere in the back of my mind I had a sneaking feeling that the girl was probably right. At first we could see nothing. The darkness seemed incarnate, surrounding, stifling us like a blanket. The four of us just stood there, waiting for the use of our eyes to return. We were in the lower chamber. The thin sunlight, filtering in through a tiny window, seemed to lose itself in the thickness of the walls, which were coated with the dust of centuries. Here and there were patches of dark stain. Only Rivers, naturally, remained comparatively unmoved.
Not much room for cameras down here. Still, I suppose we could manage.
Excuse me, but you are English?
Yes. Well, three of us are.
I think you English are interested in tortures, yes?
Ah,
You would like to see our collection?
Yes,
It's the
yes.
best in Germany.
Thank you very much. Perhaps you could show us around.
You will follow me, please. You are my first party of the day. The main collection is on the floor above. I think you will find them interesting.
I remembered the wealth of stories about the legendary cruelty of the Counts of Sonderberg, and of course their ladies. It was said that they had found a legitimate outlet for their bloodlusts by channeling them into the service of the officers of the Inquisition.
None of your half measures here. Wow. Look at all that.
Oh, Jack.
We found ourselves in a room full of torture instruments, chairs full of spikes which gave instant and excruciating pain, steel cages in which the head could slowly be crushed into a pulp, racks, belts, boots, gloves, collars, and all around the walls great headsmen's swords, evil, keen-edged weapons that would decapitate with one slash, and nearby blocks where the victims' necks had lain, with deep notches where the steel had bitten through the guard of flesh and shored into the wood. We all found ourselves speechless in the face of this bestial evidence of man's inhumanity to man. All, that is, except Malcolm Rivers.
This is unbelievable. Just what we need. It's too good to be true. It really is. Do you see? It's perfect for a setup just here. It's a question of getting permission to use this stuff, but I wonder what the formalities are. Hey, let me just sit in that chair a moment. Wow.
Rivers was behaving with his usual insensitivity, but there was something more. I think the others shared the feeling with me that it was sacrilegious. An odd word to use, I know, but there was something sacred about the place. It was a temple, but a temple to evil.
Now, over here, sirs and madam, is a famous instrument of the Inquisition. One might almost say the most famous, and still in perfect working order.
The old man pointed to the main object in this chamber of horrors, the Iron Virgin, a copy of the famous one at Nuremberg. The contraption was covered in rust and dust, except for the face, which was oddly fresh-looking, as if the custodian had scrubbed it. While the figure was curved in the shape of a woman, it was just broad enough for a man to fit inside, as we could see when the door was opened. The door itself was enormously thick and was worked open and shut by a thick chain running through a pulley attached to a heavy beam in the roof. When the weight was released, the door would slam shut. The devilish nature of the Iron Virgin was truly revealed when you examined the inside of the door. A number of iron spikes were fixed there, and when the victim was placed inside it and the door closed, the upper spikes would pierce his eyes and the lower ones his heart and vitals.
What a charming toy.
Oh, God, look at the bloodstains.
It's hard to wash out blood completely, man. And there are some who say it comes back anyway.
I think I can believe this place is haunted.
And on that happy note, I vote that we make a hurried exit.
That suits me.
Well, let's go and have that drink we promised ourselves, shall we? Right now.
No, wait.
What's up this time, for God's sake?
Hey, you, old man. Now, how big is that space?
What, sir?
The space inside. I want to see if I can get in.
Oh,
Well, I told you, I'd like sampling new experiences.
Now, Malcolm, realism is one thing.
Nonsense. Courage of your convictions and all that. Now, come on, Squire. I need your help on this.
Very good, sir, if you insist.
You're not serious.
Well, sure I am. That's a tight fit. We've grown some since those days. But I'll manage. Here. See?
You are not really allowed to do this, sir. If anyone found out, I might get into trouble.
Why should anyone find out?
I might even lose my job.
Okay, I get you. Price, give him something, will you?
Oh, well,
I'll settle with you later.
I think this is all very silly.
All in the cause of art.
Well, I, for one, won't go and see his beastly film.
That, my dear, makes two of us.
Hey, what's all the whispering about?
Oh, here you are. 2, 4, 6.
Thank you, sir. Oh, thank you, sir.
Do you think that will square your conscience?
Oh, yes, sir. I think that squares it very nicely.
And now that you've had your little game, can we all go?
Go if you like. I'm not stopping you. I'm staying here.
Oh, come on, Malcolm.
Malcolm, nothing. I'm really enjoying this. Live dangerously. That's my motto. All right, Charlie, now unfasten the door.
But, sir...
Can't somebody stop
Malcolm,
this?
you've had your little joke, but enough is enough.
Enough hell. You, Charlie, do as I tell you. Now start letting that door down. But slowly. Very, very slowly.
Despite his reluctance, the old man did as he was told. He worked the machine with a deliberate and excruciating slowness in which the outer edge of the door hadn't moved half 5 inches in as many minutes. The whole ridiculous charade had a kind of macabre thrill about it. It was a scene from Malcolm's horror film played exclusively for our benefit. And then I saw her. The cat. I don't think the others noticed at first. They were too intent on watching the progress of that door. Even Rivers had ceased to chatter. In the far corner of the chamber, dark, untamable forces were gathering. Her green, baleful eyes shone like danger lamps, and as I peered at her, I could see that their color was heightened by the blood which still smeared her coat and reddened her mouth. And still, slowly, inexorably, with the precision of an expert, the old man went on working that door. Even then I wasn't sure what the animal intended to do, or even if she intended to do anything, until suddenly... The cat! Look out for the cat! The cat launched herself, not at Malcolm, but at the luckless custodian. Her eyes blazed with ferocity. Her hair bristled till she seemed twice her normal size. Her tail lashed out like a tiger's when the quarry is before it. The cat's claws found one of his eyes, and I actually saw her tear through it and down his cheek, leaving wide bands of red where the blood seemed to spurt from every vein.
Oh, Jack! Oh, God!
Look out! He can't hold it!
With a yell of agony and terror, the man leapt back, dropping the chain which held back the door. It ran like lightning through the pulley block, and the massive door slammed shut. In the instant before the door had closed, I saw Malcolm's face. His eyes stared as if dazed, and for once in his life, he was speechless. Jack, help me get the door open. For God's sake, help me.
I'm coming. Beth, stay where you are. For God's sake, don't look.
The end must have been quick, for when we managed to wrench the door open, the spikes had done their work. They had pierced right through the skull, so that as the door opened, the body came with it, and he fell to the floor, face turned upwards. Get your wife out of here. She needs air. I'll attend to the old man.
Right.
The old custodian was leaning against the wooden pillar, holding his reddening handkerchief to his eyes, while on the face of poor Rivers, there sat the cat, purring loudly as she licked the blood which trickled through the gashed sockets of his eyes. I pushed her away from her ghoulish meal and, well, I hope no one will call me cruel, because I seized one of the old executioner's swords from its rack on the wall and with one slash shore her in two on the spot. Poor Malcolm. He'd had his total experience, a good deal more total than he'd bargained for. Cozy, wasn't it? You see what I mean about cats? You never can tell.
That was Vincent Price, bringing you The Price of Fear. Also starring in this story, Cat's Cradle, were Kenneth J. Warren and Frederick Schrecker, with John Sampson and Bonnie Harron. Cat's Cradle was first recounted as The Score by Bram Stoker, dramatized by Richard Davis, and produced by John Dias. The Price of Fear, brought to you by Vincent Price.
Browsing through a book of quotations the other day, I came across the old Scottish prayer to ward off evil spirits. You remember, from ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties and things that go bump in the night. Well, isn't it strange how the coming of night can alter the whole shape, appearance, even the atmosphere of a house or a room? Sounds are different at night, too. Anyway, reading that old incantation, I was reminded of the tragic case of Raymond Hewson. It's an odd story which I've called the waxwork, so let me tell you about it. Some years ago, I was working on a film in London. One evening, after we'd finished, I decided to take advantage of a little free time before a dinner engagement and to walk back to my hotel, exploring London as I did so. I'd been walking for about an hour when I came across an inviting-looking pub in an alley just off Baker Street. I went in and ordered a glass of beer and a sandwich. No sooner had I got my drink, enjoying the early evening atmosphere of the place, than I was surprised to hear someone calling my name.
Vincent! I say, Vincent!
Oh, good Lord, Raymond Hewson. I haven't seen you for years.
Yeah, that's right. Not since, not
Not since I did those extra bits of dialogue for that film.
Yeah.
What was it called?
Oh, dear.
The Thing Without a Thing, or some such name. Well, I must say, it really is the most amazing coincidence running into tonight of all nights. In fact, in a way, you might say it's providential.
Raymond was a spare, pale man with lank brown hair, and although he spoke plausibly, even forcibly, he had the defensive and somewhat furtive air of a man used to being snubbed. He looked, in fact, exactly what he was, a man gifted somewhat above the ordinary, who was a failure through his own lack of self-assertion. He made a living as a freelance writer, and like most freelance writers, he was always hard up. Indeed, when he spoke of our meeting as being providential, I half expected that he was leading up to asking for a small loan. But that night, Raymond had other things on his mind.
You see, I've arranged to spend tonight, all night, in the Chamber of Horrors at the waxworks round the corner. I'm hoping to write a piece about it and, get it published. Now, if I could work one or two observations from you into the story, it'd be a great selling point. Do you mind?
Oh, no, not at all.
Look, Vincent, I know you're very busy, but I wonder if you'd mind doing me a favour.
Oh, anything, my dear chap, within reason.
Well, all I want you to do is come with me to the waxworks and see me settled in. No, it won't take very long. It's only a few minutes' walk.
Well, I do have a little time to spare, and I must confess that I find the idea rather interesting.
Oh, good for you. Well, now, look here. Let me buy you a drink, and then we'll go round to the waxworks. Now, I have an appointment with the director, Miss Frayne, at 7:30, so we've just got time.
You must realize, Mr. Hewson, that there's nothing new in your request. In fact, we have to refuse it to different people at least 3 times a week.
What kind of people, I wonder, would want to spend all night alone in a waxworks?
Oh, mostly foolish young men who've made bets or who are trying to prove something to themselves.
Do you always refuse?
We do, I'm afraid. You see, if some young idiot were to lose his senses, we should find ourselves in a most embarrassing position. Of course, in this case, your being a writer, Mr. Hewson, somewhat alters the situation.
I suppose you mean that writers have no senses to lose.
Oh, no. But one imagines them to be responsible people.
You can't know many writers, Miss Frayne.
And, of course, in your case, we have something to gain. Publicity.
Publicity? Yes, well, that brings me to another point.
I think I know what's coming. Well, I have, in fact, already been in touch with our advertising manager, and he has agreed that in the event of your article being published in one of the national dailies, you will receive some payment from us.
Raymond, how do you intend to treat the story?
Well, to make it gruesome, of course. Well, gruesome, but with just a saving touch of humour. But I don't have to tell you anything about presenting horror with humour, Vincent.
Well, perhaps not. I think I get the general idea.
Well, Mr. Hewson, I wish you good luck with the story. But first, I must warn you that it is no small ordeal that you're about to attempt. And I confess that it's not something I should like to do.
May I ask why?
It's so difficult to explain. But I'll tell you what. Come along now and see for yourselves. But I warn you, Mr. Hewson, that if you are at all susceptible to atmosphere, you are in for a most uncomfortable night.
Oh, that's all right. Newspaper editors never stop telling me I've no imagination whatsoever.
Although Raymond appeared to take the whole affair lightly, I knew him well enough to realize that he was not looking forward to the ordeal. He was obviously down on his luck, and I rather think he saw the whole thing as a last desperate gamble. These thoughts crossed my mind as we followed Miss Frayne through 6 rooms, where attendants were busy shrouding the kings and queens of England and those others whose fame or notoriety had rendered them eligible for this kind of immortality.
I've asked the porter to make you as comfortable as possible, but don't expect too much. I've also given instructions for the figures downstairs to remain uncovered. Through here, gentlemen, please. Oh, before I forget, I must ask you not to smoke. We had a fire scare here this afternoon. I don't know who raised the alarm, but whoever it was, it proved to be a false one. Mind your heads as we go downstairs.
Miss Frayne led the way down an ill-lit stone stairway, which conveyed the sinister impression of giving access to a dungeon. On reaching the bottom, we passed along a small passage in which were displayed a few preliminary horrors, such as relics of the Spanish Inquisition and a pair of early English stocks. In turn, this corridor opened into a dimly lit room with a vaulted roof. It was, by design, an eerie and uncomfortable chamber, the very atmosphere of which invited its visitors to speak in whispers. The waxworks figures stood on low pedestals with numbered tickets at their feet. Seeing them elsewhere without knowing whom they represented, one would have thought them a dull, even a shabby-looking collection. But gathered together in that sinister room, ooh.
Well, here we are, gentlemen. Recent notoriety is rubbing shoulders with all the old favourites. Perhaps you recognise one or two of them. This, of course, is the famous Dr. Crippen. Insignificant little fellow, isn't he? Mm-hmm. Over there is Wilkinson, the Strangler. And there you see a tableau depicting the murder of the two little princes in the Tower of London.
It's a very dark Tower of London.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry that I can't give you any more light, but that's all there is. For obvious reasons, we keep this place as murky as possible.
Good Lord. Who's that over there?
Ah, yes, I was coming to him. That's one of our star turns. A present-day murderer who has never paid the price for his crimes.
The figure which Hewson had indicated was that of a small, slight man, not much more than 5 feet in height. It wore waxed moustaches, spectacles, and a voluminous cape. There was something so exaggeratedly French in its appearance that it reminded me of a stage caricature, something out of one of those delightful bedroom farces by Feydeau. I could not say precisely why that mild-looking face seemed so repellent, but I found myself instinctively taking a step backwards.
Nasty-looking character, isn't he? Who is it?
That is Dr. Bourdet.
Bourdet. I've heard that name recently, Bourdet. I can't remember in what connection.
You'd remember better if you were a Frenchman. For a long time, he was the terror of Paris. He carried on his work of healing by day and of throat-cutting by night.
Oh, yes, I remember now. Wasn't it said that he killed people for the sheer devilish pleasure it gave him, and always with a razor?
That's right. After his last crime, he left behind a clue which set the police on his trail. In fact, they soon amassed enough evidence to send him to the madhouse, or the guillotine, on a dozen capital charges.
But I thought you said...
That he was never caught. Oh, he was caught, all right, and tried and convicted. But somehow he managed to escape and cheated the guillotine. 1 or 2 crimes of a similar nature have taken place in London quite recently. But then it's queer, isn't it, how every notorious murderer has imitators. Anyway, most of the experts believe that he is quite definitely dead.
Well, I don't like him at all. Oh, those eyes. Whew. They seem to bite into you.
Yes, don't they? This figure's a little masterpiece. It's excellent realism, really, for Bourdet practiced hypnotism and was supposed to mesmerize his victims before dispatching them.
Oh, I see. I was wondering how so small a man could have managed to overcome his victims.
Well, it was mesmerism. At least there was never any sign of a struggle.
Do you know, I thought I saw him move.
Oh, come on now, Raymond.
No, he moved, I tell you.
Oh.
You'll have more than one optical illusion before the night's out, I expect, Mr. Hewson. But remember, you won't be locked in. You can come upstairs whenever you've had enough of it. There are watchmen on the premises, so don't be surprised if you hear them moving. I've told them you're here, by the way.
Raymond, you quite sure you want to go through with this?
Of course. And I think it very mean of you not to have offered to stay with me.
Oh, that wouldn't be fair, Mr. Hewson. You must be quite alone.
Well, don't think I won't mention you in my story, Vincent. Though I may as well tell you that I shall feature heavily as the hero.
Raymond, I assure you that even if I didn't already have a dinner engagement, I should still be only too happy to let you stay here all night by yourself. This place gives me the creeps.
Well, Mr. Hewson, I'll wish you a very good night.
And so do I, Raymond. A very good night and a successful story to celebrate tomorrow. Why don't you give me a ring, I'm at Jameson's Hotel in the Strand.
Thanks, I'll do that. Well, good night.
Good night, Mr. Hewson.
And thanks for tucking me in.
And And so we left him, and after a quick and I must confess welcome drink in Miss Frayn's office, I went back to my hotel to get changed for dinner. It must have been at about 3 o'clock the next morning that I received an urgent telephone call from Miss Frayn asking me to return to the waxworks immediately.
And this is how our night watchman found him. He thought he heard somebody scream and came down here to investigate, and immediately rang me at my flat. And I'm afraid that when I found what had happened, I rather, panicked and rang you. You see, I didn't know what else to do. I didn't have his home number or anything.
I understand. Have you notified the police? It's usual, you know, in cases of sudden death.
I did think of it, sir, but I thought it better to ring Miss Frayn first. I could see at once it was too late to call a doctor.
I'm afraid I didn't think too clearly. Oh, how awful. This is the sort of thing we've always tried to avoid. What will the directors say?
Well, there's time enough to let them know later. Have you any idea of how it could have happened?
Not at all, sir. I just heard this scream, and came running.
I noticed Raymond's notebook lying on the floor by the tape recorder, which had run out. I began idly turning over the pages, and what follows is my own interpretation of what happened from the time Miss Frayn and I had left him on that fatal evening. Why don't you give me a ring, I'm at Jameson's Hotel in the Strand.
Oh, thanks. Yes, I'll do that. Well, good night.
Good night, Mr. Hewson.
And thanks for tucking me in. Right, now let's get organised. Now, let me see. Notebooks, pencils, tape recorder. It's in working order. Flask, yes, mustn't forget that. Oh, God, it's cold down here. I wish I brought a blanket. Now, rough notes first and then record. Yeah, should get a nice, creepy, atmospheric piece. Might even flog it to the BBC. Right. The dim, unvarying light fell on the rows of figures, which were so uncannily like human beings. The air in the chamber was stagnant as the water at the bottom of a standing pond. Good God, what's that?
Oh, good evening, sir. Startled you, did I? I'm very sorry. Miss Frayn asked me to bring down this chair for you. She thought it might be more comfortable than the one you've got, sir.
Oh, God, you made me jump.
Yes, it does get you like that down here, sir. Creepy, that's what it is, sir. Creepy. Now, sir, where would you like this chair? Over here by Dr. Baudet?
No, not there. No, just leave it over there in the gangway. I'll put it where I want it later.
Oh, very good, sir. Will this do?
Yes, thank you.
Well, sir, I'll wish you a good night. I'll be upstairs if you want me. Oh, and by the way, sir, don't let any of them sneak up behind you, sir, and touch you with their clammy hands. Good night, sir.
Stupid old fool nearly gave me a heart attack. Now, where to put this damn chair? By the little Frenchman. God, how those eyes dig into one. No, I know. I'll sit here with my back to him. Then I won't have to look at his face. Why not? I'm not afraid of him. Or am I? Come on, Hewson. Come on, old son. Your nerves have started playing tricks already. He's only a waxwork. They're all only waxworks. What was that? Something moved. Oh, come on, this won't do. Now, where was I? Yes, stagnant as the water at the bottom of a standing pond. Yes, that's good. Now, note here. Right. After a while, it seemed as if the figures moved when not being watched. But there was not a breath of air in the chamber to stir a curtain or to rustle a hanging drapery. There, good. Now it's fine. Now, clean it up and get this bit on tape. The dim, unvarying light fell on the rows of figures, which... Hello, something moved again. I could swear it. It's Crippen. Every time I take my eyes off him, he moves. Damn it, they all do. Oh, God, I better have a drink. That's better. All saying it's not good enough. I'm going upstairs. I'm not going to spend the night with a lot of shifty, bloody dummies who move when you're not looking. Now, what's the time? 1:30. Oh, 6 more hours. I'll never do it. What's that? It's Crippen again. I nearly caught him that time. You better be careful, Crippen! And all the rest of you! Or I'll smash you all to pieces! You hear? Do you hear me? Why don't I go? Why should I sit here scribbling when I can write all this up tomorrow? Oh, no. What's that? Oh, God. All right. Now. I'm Raymond Hewson, freelance writer. I've been here in this Chamber of Horrors for, a few hours. My nerves are beginning to play tricks on me. And that's all they are, tricks. Oh, I'm a living, breathing man, and all around me are statues, dummies. They can't move, and they can't whisper. Neither can they breathe. But by God, one of them is. Somebody else in this room is breathing. You, Dr. Baudet, you moved. Yes, you did. Damn you, I saw you.
Good evening, monsieur.
I was right, you did move.
Quite right, my dear friend. And now, let me get off this ridiculous platform.
Don't come near me!
Really, Mr. Hewson, let us not be melodramatic, huh? Ah! Oh, that's better. One gets so stiff standing in the same position all the time. I need hardly tell you that I never expected to have the pleasure of a companion here for the night.
Oh, what the devil are you?
My dear sir, have no illusions. I'm not one of these contemptible effigies miraculously come to life. I am Dr. Baudet himself.
But I don't understand.
How do I come to be here? Let me explain. You see, for some time now, I've been living quietly in England. Well, late this afternoon, as I was passing this building, I saw a policeman regarding me somewhat too closely. So I mingled with the crowd and came in here. And when I entered this chamber, I saw at once my means of escape from the so inquisitive policeman.
I don't understand.
Ah, you have no imagination at all, sir. It was so simple. I raised a cry of fire, stripped my effigy of the cape, hid it, and simply took its place on the platform. Et voila!
But you must have been there for hours. Didn't anyone notice you?
One small boy only. He screamed and said that he saw me moving. I understood that his parents threatened to give him a good hiding on his return home. I can only hope that the threat has been executed to the letter.
So you really are Dr. Baudet? What a scoop.
Scoop? Oh, yes, yes. Well, we shall see.
And to think I nearly packed up and went. Fancy missing this. What a story. Dr. Baudet. The French Jack the Ripper.
A slight exaggeration.
But why do it? Why commit these awful murders?
You see, the world is divided into two classes. The collectors and the non-collectors. The collectors collect anything according to their individual tastes. I collect throats. No, do not attempt to move. It is useless. You cannot move unless I say so.
But my notes, I must get all this down. And I'll never have another chance like this.
Exactement. You have given me the opportunity of gratifying my somewhat unusual whim.
No. Just hold on a minute.
But you have a skinny neck, sir. If you will overlook such a personal remark.
Now, you look here, Dr. Bloody Baudet. If you think
I
you
would
can...
never have selected you from choice. I like thick necks. Thick, red, meaty necks. But enough talking.
Enough talking? I haven't even started yet. I'm not alone here, you know. I've only got to shout, and the watchman will come running. And where will you be then?
This is a little French razor. The blade, you observe, is very narrow.
Look. Look, I promise not to say a word about you being here and not to use the story until...
Does the razor suit you, sir? Well, we shall see.
Look, I won't use a damn story at all.
No, sir. Your appeals are useless. You are now completely under my control. You cannot even speak unless I tell you to do so. Now, you will please have the goodness to raise your chin a little. Thank you. Oh, just a fraction more. Merci, monsieur. Merci. That is parfait.
Poor Raymond. When I had finished reading his notes, I turned my attention to the tape recorder. Of course, the batteries had run flat hours ago, but the ever-obliging Raymond had brought along his own replacements, which were lying conveniently at his feet, unused. Carefully, I rewound the tape and switched the machine over to playback. Standing there in silence, the three of us listened as the tape played, hoping perhaps to find the answer to Raymond's sudden death. When it had finished, we stood there looking at each other, puzzled. Then I rewound the last few moments of the tape and played it again. And only then did I understand.
Now, you look here, Dr. Bloody Baudet. If you think... Enough talking, I haven't even started yet. I'm not alone here, you know. I've only got to shout, and the watchman will come running. Where will you be then? Look here, look, I promise not to say a word about you being here and not to use a story until... Look, I won't use a damn story at all.
The waxwork figures stood apathetically in their places, waiting to be admired by the crowds who would soon wander fearfully among them. In their midst, in the center gangway, Raymond Hewson sat still, leaning far back in his armchair. His chin was tilted up, as if he were waiting to receive attention from a barber, and although there was not a scratch upon his throat, he was cold and dead. His previous employers had been wrong in crediting him with no imagination. If anything, he had an overabundance of that particular commodity. As I left that sinister chamber, I glanced back. Dr. Bourdette, on his pedestal, watched the dead man unemotionally. He did not move, nor was he capable of motion, but then, after all, he was only a waxwork. One thing, however, still troubles me, that laughter on the tape. Of course, it could have been on the tape already. It has since, I confess, crossed my mind that perhaps Miss Frayne had added it, hoping for extra publicity. Perhaps I thought that was why she had not called the police at once. But these thoughts I dismissed as being both ungallant and impractical. But what else could explain it? The alternative is too awful to think of. Could it really have been the waxworks, those vacant, staring effigies laughing at the fate of Raymond Hewson? Could it? I wonder. Well, good night. Sleep well.
That was Vincent Price bringing you The Price of Fear. Also starring in The Waxwork was Peter Barkworth, with Cyril Shapps, Joan Cooper, and Christopher Bidmead. The Waxwork was first recounted by A.M. Burridge, dramatized by Barry Campbell, and produced by John Dias.
The Price of Fear, brought to you by Vincent Price.
Glancing through my morning paper over breakfast today, I noticed that an enterprising gentleman in the catering business has invented a musical hot dog called, would you believe, a humburger. Isn't it amazing the things some people will eat? Food, by the way, is something of a hobby of mine, and I never cease to wonder at the incredible results that can be achieved by a good chef with a few basic ingredients. A little meat, a few vegetables, a glass of wine, a sprig of parsley, and voila. You know, there are few more interesting experiences than being allowed into the kitchen of a really first-class restaurant, to watch a master chef at work. And, of course, this privilege is rarely extended to anyone, which reminds me of an experience I had a few years back. And to give it the right flavor, let's call it speciality of the house. I was staying in New York at the time, and a friend of mine, Harry Laffler, knowing that I was interested in good food, invited me to dine with him one evening at his favorite restaurant. Harry was by way of being an international advertising man, and knowing the size of his expense account, I had imagined that I was in for an evening at one of New York's plushier night spots. Imagine my surprise, therefore, when I found myself being ushered towards a shabby brownstone building in an almost deserted downtown back street.
Well, here we are. This is Spiero's. What do you think of it?
Well, Harry, I must say it's not quite what I expected. It is rather dismal, isn't it?
I'll have you know that Spiero's is the restaurant without pretensions. It is the one place in these ghastly neurotic times that has refused to compromise. When you enter Spiero's, you leave the insanity of this hour, of this day, of this year, and you find yourself for a brief span restored in spirit.
You make it sound more like a cathedral than a restaurant.
I wonder if I've done the right thing in bringing you here.
Oh, come on now, Harry. I was only joking.
You see, you are the one person I know with a knowledge of good food.
Thank you.
Knowing about Spiro's and not having an appreciative friend to share it with is like having a unique work of art locked in a room where no one else can see it. Anyway, let's not stand here talking. Let's go in.
Good evening, sir.
Mr. Lafleur and a guest.
Ah, yes, sir. Please come this way, gentlemen.
Oh. The waiter led us through a mirrored foyer into a small dining room. It was no size at all, but the half-dozen or so guttering gas jets which provided the only illumination threw such a deceptive light that the walls flickered and faded into uncertain distance. There were no more than 8 or 10 tables in the room, and all but one were occupied. The few waiters serving moved amongst them with quiet efficiency. It really was very pleasant. And as soon as we were seated at the vacant table, I said as much to Harry.
There. I knew you'd like it. But wait till you taste the food. By the way, did you notice that there are no women present?
Yes, I did. Isn't that rather odd?
Spiro doesn't encourage them.
Oh.
And I can tell you his method of getting rid of them is very effective.
Excuse me, sir. Do you wish to be served now?
Tell me, is the special being served tonight, waiter?
Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. There is no special this evening.
But it's been a month already, and I had hoped that my friend here...
I'm sorry, sir, but you do understand the difficulties, sir.
Oh, well, what the hell. But I was hoping, Vincent, to introduce you to the greatest treat that Spiro offers.
Oh, never mind. I'm quite sure that whatever we decide upon will be delicious.
Shall I serve at once, sir?
Yes, please.
Very good, sir.
Well, Harry, have you ordered in advance?
No, I should have explained. Spiro offers no choice whatsoever.
But suppose we don't like what we're given?
Oh, don't worry. No matter how exacting your taste, you will relish every mouthful. Just think a moment about the advantages of such a system. For instance, instead of a hurly-burly of sweating cooks trying to prepare 100 different dishes, here we have a chef who stands serenely alone, bringing all his culinary arts to bear on one task.
Oh, then you've seen Spiro's kitchen. Tell me, what's it like?
Unfortunately, I can't. I've never seen it. Oh. Believe me, I've tried. In fact, I admit that my desire to see the inside of this particular kitchen has become almost an obsession with me.
Well, have you ever mentioned this to Spiro?
At least a dozen times. But he just shrugs his massive shoulders and smiles. Still, I've never given up hope.
At this point, the waiter reappeared, bearing 2 soup bowls and a small tureen, from which he slowly ladled a measure of clear, thin soup. I must confess that I tasted this soup with some curiosity. It was delicately flavored, bland to the verge of tastelessness. Automatically, I reached for the salt.
Well, what do you think of the soup?
Excellent.
If you'll pardon me for saying so, you don't.
What?
You do not find it excellent. You find it flat and badly in need of salt.
But
how do I know?
Yes.
Because that was my reaction when I first dined here. But I'm confident that you will make the same discovery as I did. By the time you've finished your soup, your desire for salt will be non-existent.
Well, Harry proved to be quite right. And before I had finished the soup, I was relishing every mouthful of it. It was really wonderful. Harry smiled at me across the table.
Well, do you agree with me now? Wasn't I right?
Yes, you certainly were.
You will find that the absence of condiments is only one of several noteworthy characteristics which mark Spiro's. I may as well prepare you for the rest. For example, no alcoholic beverages of any sort are served here.
Oh, really, Harry?
Also, there is a ban on the use of tobacco in any form.
Oh, but good Lord, is this a restaurant or a temperance hotel?
You don't understand. By alternating stimulant and narcotic, you seesaw the delicate balance of your tastes so violently that it loses its most precious quality, the appreciation of fine food.
Not another word was spoken until we had both finished our main course. Nor was there any need for words in the presence of such food. It was delicious. And it was only with a great effort that I prevented myself from wolfing the lot at one go and establishing myself as a grade-A glutton on my very first visit to this amazing restaurant. When we had both finished eating, Harry and I smiled at each other contentedly. We were both aware that we had enjoyed an exceptional culinary experience. Harry, if I had any doubts about Spiro's, I apologize unreservedly. In all your praise of the place, there is not a single word of exaggeration.
Ah, that is only part of the story. You heard me mention the special, which unfortunately was not on tonight's menu. Well, what we've just eaten is as nothing when compared to the absolute delights of that special.
Good Lord, what is it? I mean, nightingale's tongues, fillet of unicorn?
Neither. It is lamb.
Lamb? Oh, come on, you've got to be joking.
If I were to give you in my own unstinted words my opinion of this dish, you would think me insane. That is how deeply the mere thought of it affects me. It is a select portion of the rarest sheep in existence. Lamb Armistan.
Armistan?
A remote and almost unknown place on the border which separates Russia and Afghanistan. From chance remarks dropped by Spiro, I gather that it's hardly more than a plateau which grazes the pitiful remnants of a flock of superb sheep. Spiro, by some means or other, has obtained exclusive rights to this flock, and is therefore the only restaurateur in the world ever to have lamb Armistan on his menu. I can tell you, the appearance of this dish is a very rare occurrence indeed, and nobody ever knows the exact date on which it will be served.
But surely Spiro could provide some advanced knowledge of this event.
Well, the only objection to that is simply stated. Should advance information slip out, then the professional gluttons, in which this city abounds, would get the opportunity to taste this dish, and sooner or later drive out the regular patrons.
You don't mean to say that these few people present are the only ones in the entire city who know of the existence of Spiro's?
In the entire world.
Oh, that's incredible.
It's kept a secret by every single patron, a solemn obligation. By accepting my invitation this evening, you automatically assume that obligation. I hope you can be trusted with it.
Well, if that's the way you want it, Harry, of course I can.
It may sound strange to you indeed. It may border on eccentricity, but I'm a solitary man, and I feel to my depths that this restaurant is both family and friend to me.
I must confess that until that moment I had never really thought much about Harry's private life. To me he was a pleasant friend and dining companion, and his private affairs had never really concerned me. Now, hearing him refer to Spiro's in this manner, I almost came to feeling sorry for him. By the end of 2 weeks, Harry's invitations for me to join him at Spiro's had become something of a ritual. Now, I am by nature one of those people with a lean and hungry look, but I began to notice that I was rapidly putting on weight. I was, to tell the truth, becoming plump. I began to wonder whether Harry, by no means a lightweight, had also been lean before he started to dine at Spiro's. Thinking the whole thing over, I decided that I would not refuse to eat at the restaurant until I had both tasted the lamb Armistan and also been introduced to the amazing Mr. Spiro. And then one night, a few weeks later, I achieved both these ambitions, and both, I may say, exceeded my expectations.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Tonight is the special, sir.
What? Well, this is it. The culinary triumph of all times. And faced bad, you are embarrassed by the very emotion it distills.
Yes, I must confess that my heart is certainly beating faster than usual. Tell me, Harry, the other diners, do they feel the same way?
Well, of course they do. Look around you and judge for yourself.
Yes, you're right. Anyway, there's comfort in numbers. It's nice to know that we all have the same basic animal feelings and can anticipate, or should I say, slaver over our meat.
Oh, look, one of our number appears to be in for disappointment. Over there, at the end table, the empty seat.
Oh, yes, the stout, bald man. He's not here tonight. I do believe it's the first dinner he's missed here in weeks.
Rain or shine, crisis or calamity, I don't think he's missed an evening at Spiro's in 10 years. Imagine his disappointment when he finds that he's missed the speciality of the house.
Mr. Lafleur and friend, I am so pleased, so very, very pleased.
Ah, Mrs. Vera.
Tonight, gentlemen, the lamb armistan will be an unqualified success. I myself have been stewing in the miserable kitchen all day, prodding the foolish chef to do everything just so. The just so is the important part, eh? But I see your friend does not know me. An introduction, perhaps.
The words ran in a smooth, fluid eddy. They rippled, they purred, and I found myself hypnotized and could do no more than stare as Harry performed the introductions. Spiro's mouth, the mouth that uncoiled this sinuous monologue, was alarmingly wide, with thin, mobile lips that curled and twisted with every syllable. He had a wide nose and wide set eyes. It was an amazing face, and somehow I had the feeling that I had seen it before. It was somehow familiar.
I am so very pleased to meet you, Mr. Price. So very, very pleased.
Oh, thank you. How do you do, Mr. Spiro?
You like my little establishment, eh?
Oh, yes.
You have a great treat in store for you today, I assure you.
My friend is by way of being a great admirer of yours, Spiro.
It's true.
Very great compliment. You compliment me with your presence, and I return the compliment with my food, eh? But I assure you, the lamb armistan is far superior to anything of your past experience. All the trouble obtaining it, all the difficulty of preparation is truly merited.
You know, I've wondered why, with all these difficulties you mention, why you even bothered to present lamb armistan. Surely your other dishes are excellent enough to uphold your reputation.
Yeah, perhaps it is a matter of psychology. Someone discovers a wonder and must share it with the others, eh? Or perhaps it is just a matter of good business.
Well, then, in the light of all this, and considering all the conventions you impose on your customers, why don't you turn it into a private club?
So perspicacious. I will tell you. Because there is more privacy in a public eating place than in the most exclusive club in existence. Here, no one inquires into your affairs. No one desires to know the intimacies of your life. We are not curious about our guests. We welcome you when you are here. We have no regrets when you go. That is the answer, eh?
Yes, I'm sorry. I had no intention of prying.
No, you are not prying. On the contrary, I invite questions.
Don't let Spiro intimidate you. I've known him for years, and I assure you his bark is far worse than his bite. But before you know it, he'll be showing you all the privileges of the house, except inviting you into his precious kitchen, of course.
For that you may have to wait a little while, I'm afraid.
What did I tell you? Come on now, Spiro. The truth. Has anyone except staff ever stepped into that kitchen of yours?
You see on the wall over there the portrait of one to whom I did that honor. A dear friend and a patron of long standing.
Where? Oh, yes, there. Oh. Who is it?
Oh, it's Andrew Herring, the writer. You know the one, Harry. He used to write those marvelously cynical articles for the New American. And then he took himself off to Mexico, I think it was, and disappeared.
Of course. And here I've been sitting, staring at that picture for years without recognizing it. It must have been a blow for you when your old friend disappeared, Spiro.
It was, I assure you, gentlemen. But I like to think of it this way. He was probably greater in his death than in his life, eh? A most tragic man. He often told me that his only happy hours were spent here at this table. Pathetic, is it not? And to think the only favor I could ever show him was to let him witness the mysteries of my humble kitchen.
You know, you seem very certain of his death. After all, as I remember, no evidence has ever turned up to support it.
None at all. Remarkable, eh? But no more talk, please, gentlemen, for here comes the speciality of the house, lamb armistan.
Spiro served the meal himself, taking great care not to lose a single drop of gravy as he sliced the joint, underdone to perfection. He filled the 2 plates with the chunks of dripping meat.
Gentlemen, bon appetit.
With great deliberation, I took a mouthful of the lamb armistan. It was magnificent.
Good, eh? Better than you imagined?
It is as impossible for the uninitiated to imagine the delights of lamb amistan as
for a mortal man to look into his own soul?
Perhaps. Perhaps you have just had a glimpse into your own soul, eh?
Yes, perhaps. And a gratifying picture it made, too. All fang and claw.
Well, I must be going. But sometimes, my friend, when you have nothing better to do, sit perhaps for a little while in a dark room and think of this world and what it is and what it is going to be. And then you must turn your thoughts to the significance of the lamb in religion. It will be so interesting. And now, gentlemen, I have interrupted your meal for too long. Au revoir, gentlemen.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
He's an interesting man, Spiro. Very interesting man. You know, Harry, he reminds me of someone. I just can't think who. You don't think I offended him in any way, do you?
Offended him? No. Goodness, no. He loves that sort of talk. Lamb amistam is a ritual with him. Get him started, and he'll just go on forever.
It was a month later that it finally came to me exactly who it was that Spiro reminded me of, and when it did, I laughed out loud. Of course, Spiro reminded me of the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland. You remember, the cat only grinned when it saw Alice. It looked very good-natured, she thought. Still, it had very long claws and a great many teeth, so she felt that it ought to be treated with respect. I mentioned this to Harry that night as we were walking along that dismal street that led to Spiro's.
You may be right, but I'm not a fit judge. Anyway, it's a long time since I read Alice in Wonderland. A very long time.
Help!
What?
Help!
Look there. Outside Spiro's. Isn't that one of the waiters?
Yes.
Looks as though he's in trouble.
He's being attacked. Come on.
Yes.
Help!
Goddamn pickpocket! Push me, will you? You're looking for a goddamn fighter? Well, you got one, mister.
Let me go! Let me go!
Not yet, you lousy little creep.
Well, what's going on here?
Help me, sir! This man, he's drunk! He tried to stab me!
Oh, drunk, am I? Oh, well, we'll... Hey, you dirty...
Hey, grab him, Harry. Quick! Look out for that knife.
Let go of him. Do you hear? Let go.
Hey, what the hell's happening here? I'll cut your goddamn throat, mister.
No, you don't.
Boy, is he all right, do you think? That was some punch, Harry.
Well, I think he's stunned. He banged his head as he fell.
Yeah, well, in any case, it's a job for the police.
No, sir.
What?
No police. Mr. Spiro does not like police.
Oh, now, wait.
I beg you, no police.
Anyway, he's coming round. He'll be all right. But what started all this anyway?
I pushed against him accidentally, and he accused me of robbing him. He's drunk, sir.
You can say that again. Well, now, you go inside and get cleaned up. We'll see to him.
Thank you, sir. To you, I owe my life. If there is anything I can do to repay you...
You just cut along, and if Mrs. Vera has any questions, you tell him to see me.
Yes, sir. You saved my life. Thank you, sir.
And with that, the waiter disappeared into the restaurant. Well, after all the excitement and kerfuffle of that incident, I must confess that I found I had quite an appetite. And as soon as we were comfortably seated in the restaurant, Harry and I debated with some trepidation as to whether or not we could expect the special lamb armistan that evening. Soon our regular waiter appeared and carefully set 2 tumblers on the table. We almost simultaneously inquired after the special.
No, sir. I'm sorry, sir. No special tonight.
Oh, hell, just my luck. And I'll probably miss out next time, too.
Why, Harry, you going away?
Yes, damn it. I'm off to South America for a month or 2 in order to mount a new campaign for some very rich clients.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. When do you leave?
Tonight. I managed to wangle some reservations. This was intended to be in the nature of a farewell celebration.
Oh, and no special. What a shame.
Just my luck.
Well, I'm going to miss you, Harry. I have enjoyed our evenings together, and these little dinners of ours they've come to mean a great deal to me.
Shall I serve now, sir?
Of course, I didn't realize you were waiting.
Shortly afterwards, the waiter served us, and we turned our attention to our dinner. Harry finished his quickly and continued to bemoan his fate and to regret loudly the thought of missing lamb armistan during his trip. Then, just as I finished my meal, a waiter leaned over to take Harry's plate. It wasn't our usual waiter, but the man who we had rescued from the drunken sailor. I asked him how he was feeling, but to my surprise, he completely ignored me, and with the air of a man under great strain, he whispered to Harry,
"My life. I owe it to you. I can't repay you."
Well, you have repaid me with your thanks. Please, let's hear no more about it.
But I will help you, sir, even if you don't want me to. Do not go into the kitchen tonight.
Huh?
My life for yours, sir. Tonight or any night. Do not go into Spiro's kitchen.
Why shouldn't I go into the kitchen? Don't be absurd.
What's going on here? Is everything all right, gentlemen?
Ah, good evening, Spiro. This man is a little unnerved, I think.
Ah, yes. An unfortunate experience.
He's saying something about my not visiting your kitchen. What's it all about? Do you know what he means?
But of course. He was giving you good advice. It so happens that my too emotional chef heard some rumor that I might have a guest in the kitchen tonight. He flew into a fearful rage and even threatened to give his notice on the spot. However, have no fear. I have succeeded in showing him what a signal honor it is to have a true connoisseur observe him at his work firsthand. That is all. No, Sancho, you are at the wrong table. See that it does not happen again.
The waiter slunk away without daring to raise his eyes, and Spiro drew up a chair to the table. He seated himself and drew his hand lightly over his hair.
My invitation for you to visit my humble kitchen, I had hoped, Mr. Lafleur, to be a surprise, but now the surprise is gone, and all that is left is the invitation.
Are you serious? Do you mean that at last we really are to witness the preparation of food in your kitchen tonight?
No, Mr. Lafleur, not both. I am faced with a dilemma of great proportions, gentlemen. You, Mr. Lafleur, have been my guest for 10 years, but our friend here...
Oh, Mr. Spiro, I really understand perfectly. I mean, this invitation is solely to Harry here, and naturally my presence is embarrassing. Well, look, no, wait a minute. As it happens, I do have another engagement for later, and I must be on my way anyhow. So, you see, there's no dilemma at all, really.
Absolutely not. That wouldn't be fair at all. No. Surely, Spiro, you can make an exception on this one occasion.
I'm very sorry, sir.
Harry, I am not going to sit here and spoil your great adventure. Believe me. And then just think of that ferocious chef. I'm sure he's just dying to get his cleaver into you.
So humorous.
So I'll just say goodbye now and leave you to Spiro. I'm sure he'll take pains to give you a good show.
Well, that's good of you, Vincent. Thanks. I hope you continue to dine here while I'm away.
Oh, and have a good trip, Harry.
Thank you. Bye now.
I will expect you, Mr. Price. Au revoir.
Au revoir. And so I left them to it, the smiling Spiro and Harry Lafleur, about to realize his greatest ambition. On the way out, I stopped in the foyer to collect my coat, and as I was straightening my tie, I caught a glimpse in the mirror of Harry and Spiro, already at the kitchen door. Spiro was holding it open, invitingly wide with one hand, while the other hand rested lightly on Harry's plump, meaty shoulder, squeezing it ever so gently, almost lovingly, rather in the way a housewife squeezes a prime fat turkey before she puts it into the oven. I've never seen or heard of Harry Lafleur again. Shortly afterwards, I left New York in order to do some filming in England. I've not been back since, and therefore I have never had the opportunity of dining again at Spiro's, nor of renewing my acquaintance with its mysterious owner. In the intervening years, however, my interest in food and its preparation has increased, and I can now create and experiment with recipes of my own. But I must confess that even in my wildest flights of culinary fancy, I have never yet dared to attempt lamb amistad.
That was Vincent Price bringing you The Price of Fear. Co-starring in The Speciality of the House was Hugh Burton, with Francis de Wolfe, Vernon Joyner, and William Slay. The Speciality of the House was first recounted by Stanley Ellin, dramatized by Barry Campbell, and produced by John Dyers. The Price of Fear, brought to you by Vincent Price.
Hello. I know there are those amongst you who will consider the old adage, every picture tells a story, as debatable as it is familiar. As a lifelong art collector and enthusiast myself, I have often speculated that the story surrounding a picture, the human drama, can prove infinitely more fascinating than any story in paint, trapped within the confines of a frame. And the tale I'm about to tell you, which I've called An Eye for an Eye, will, I'm sure, convince you of the truth of this. Recently, I went to an important sale of Impressionist paintings. The auction room just off London's fashionable St. James was packed to capacity with art speculators from the four corners of the globe.
Lot 23, Auguste Renoir, Anemones, oil on canvas 38 inches by 14. An opening bid of 25,000. And 5, 30... 35. Bidding at 35 against you, sir. 40. 45. Thank you. Now standing at 45.
Renoir, Monet, Manet, Degas. Each in their turn glowed briefly down at us from the auctioneer's easel, to be knocked down with almost indecent haste and returned backstage for crating and shipping.
Lot 97, Camille.
The auctioneer's voice was tiring now. The serious business of the day was over.
Lot 98, Study of a Girl.
I really couldn't begin to explain why, but I was already halfway through the door when something about that simple announcement stopped me dead in my tracks and made me turn back.
Study of a Girl, attributed to Pissarro, unsigned, unauthenticated. Oil on canvas 20 inches by 12, from the estate of the Count Luigi della Santa. Opening bid invited, I think, ladies and gentlemen.
Study of a Girl. And there she was, smiling into the gloom of that near-deserted auction room. My old friend, Luigi della Santa, notorious acquisitor of yachts and palazzos and paintings and celebrities. Now here, this, his last prized acquisition, Study of a Girl. The auctioneer was still inviting an opening bid, but meeting with little success. As I consulted the catalogue and smiled ruefully that even in death, Luigi steadfastly insisted on his beloved title of Count, it seemed ironically appropriate that the pedigree of his beloved painting should now turn out to be as unauthenticated as his own. But how long ago it all seemed, how long. Midsummer. I'd just completed a long stint of filming in and around Naples. After the sweltering heat of those studio arcs, Luigi's invitation to spend a few days with him on his yacht anchored off of Sorrento, would have been eagerly accepted in any event, but I remembered as the launch ferried me across the mere smoothness of that beautiful bay that it was the prospect of at last viewing Luigi's recently acquired Pissarro that made the invitation totally irresistible. Later, in the cool comfort of the yacht's saloon, I was not to be disappointed. The painting was everything its proud possessor had claimed for it, and perhaps a great deal more.
Well, Vincenzo, you like it? Well?
Well, it's beautiful, quite beautiful.
Of course. You see, Contessa, didn't I tell you that my very good and wise friend would come and that he would like it, didn't I?
Yes, Luigi, you did.
And now, Vincenzo, you must tell me how much you like it. $5,000 worth? $10,000?
Luigi, she's exquisite.
Exquisite? Oh, she is perfection. She is the perfection of perfection. She is the perfection of perfection.
You're spilling your wine, Caro.
And yet, would you believe it, when I tell you, my friend, there are still those dilettantes, those ingrates, those whoremongers who have the gall to insult the intelligence by saying that it cannot be the work of the master.
Oh, but Luigi, the master, did not think fit to sign it.
What need for him to sign it, when every line makes a signature? I tell you, this is not a painting. It is an experience. She is alive, vibrant.
Oh, such passionate enthusiasm, Luigi. I shall begin to suspect I have acquired a rival. Vincenzo, if you will permit. It is not the wine of my country, but then it is not the wine of my choosing. The Count prefers to import. So instead of buona fortuna, permit me to wish you bonne chance.
Bonne chance. As she proposed the toast, the charms of Luigi's Contessa di Terra made those of the artist's model obvious, commonplace, and it was almost as though the Contessa were reading my thoughts.
But I feel sure you will forgive dear Luigi's schoolboy enthusiasm for this new acquisition, Vincenzo. As a lifelong friend, you will doubtless have witnessed many such enthusiasms.
It isn't difficult to forgive. I so wholeheartedly share it.
Ha! Bravo, my friend.
Perhaps. But between you and Luigi, the appreciation has always been different, I think.
Oh? How different?
Be warned, Vincenzo. It is not wise to encourage her.
Because watching you see the painting for the very first time, there was peace. It was not hard to tell that for you the appreciation was for the talent it contained, for the genius. You understood what had been intended and what had been achieved.
And for me? Is it not the same for me?
Prego, Luigi. Permit me to finish. You see, Vincenzo, before Luigi permits me the time to make a point, he is so perfectly demonstrating it. It is not what the painting does inside of him that makes him so determined to possess it. It is simply because there are others who might wish to possess it even more than he does. The price is all that is important for him. He asks how much you think it is worth. $5,000? 10? And when you refuse to give him the answer...
Am unable to.
See how prettily he sulks. Oh, it's not his fault, you understand. It does not make me love him less, but everything in this so beautiful life is reduced to the level of price, status, possession. Everything which is bad enough, but every one worse. Oh, much worse. But possession, life, cannot always be that simple. People, things, cannot always be caught in the net of our understanding, just as it is not always possible to divorce the manner of our deaths from the manner of our lives.
There are more things in heaven and earth.
What made you say that?
Shouldn't I have?
Well, I should have preferred it if you had quoted something from our beloved Dante. But the sentiment is the same. It is what I believe.
Ah, tante Dante. Much talk makes for much hunger.
Scusi, Count. La colazione è servito.
Si, Carlos, si. Come, my friends, we are to take luncheon on the deck. Besides, after so much play-acting in the dark, Vincenzo, it is now necessary we return the color to your cheeks, eh?
Well, there's nothing I'd like better.
Also, and most important, Luigi has yet another treat in store for you.
Another?
Si. To mark the private viewing of his so beautiful painting, the great Luigi, master chef of all the Italias, has himself created a unique gastronomic masterpiece. A meal worthy of a gourmet of such international repute as you.
Oh, my dear Luigi, such flattery. At this rate, the color will be returned to my cheeks much sooner than you anticipate.
We shall see, Vincenzo. We shall see.
Contessa?
We shall see.
Our lunch party looked like being a jolly affair, to begin with anyway. The wine and the sun went straight to our heads, and the Contessa's affectionate baiting of Luigi continued good-humoredly as the first course was served. The question of Luigi's title provided her readiest target of attack. As to his true origins, well, there were many who insisted that his father could still be found running a small trattoria in that straggling, impoverished town we now viewed across the bay.
So why doesn't he admit it? Be proud to admit it. You see, it is always so. What he refuses to accept, he laughs away. Is that not so, Vincenzo?
I think I'll just concentrate on this excellent wine.
Oh, but you disappoint me. What? You tell me that you, too, are afraid to burst this ridiculous balloon.
Perhaps because Vincenzo has the good sense to realize it is not a balloon, and that it certainly is not ridiculous. It is...
What is it? Bambino, what is it?
It is an insult. It is a double insult of my lineage and breeding.
Oh, I'm sorry, Luigi.
Oh, so don't be my friend. It's good to laugh at such archaic distinctions.
Vincenzo has seen the papers. Is that not true?
I have seen papers.
Papers are for the forging. So, has Vincenzo seen my papers? Of course he has not. And why has he not? Because he does not need to. He has only to use his eyes to realize that I am of the line just as you are of the gutter.
Then why does the Contessa dishonor her line by sitting at my table?
Oh, because even a penniless Contessa has to eat somewhere. And like his cook of a father and his cook of a grandfather before him, Count Luigi still makes the best fish soup in the whole of Italy. True, Caro?
True, my father and his father before him made the best soup.
Caught, Caro.
The Contessa's high praise for Luigi's culinary skills were justified, certainly, whether inherited or not. After a lifetime of experience, I've come to the conclusion that there are only really two kinds of master chef. Those who have spent long years perfecting their skills, and those who have added to this a simple flair, an ability to transform the simplest meal into something near approaching a work of art.
Well, now, my good friends, your attention, your undivided attention, if you please. It is with the greatest pride and pleasure Luigi himself presents to you his own original creation.
Oh!
Specialité of the house. Vincenzo.
Luigi waited. As I peered into the deep, serving tureen he set in front of me, I remember thinking that after the great build-up he'd given it, his specialty of the house turned out to be something of an anticlimax. The ingredients were certainly commonplace enough, served on a bed of rice, a veritable hodgepodge of all the kinds of fish native to the locality. Something I'd frequently enjoyed with a bottle of ordinary vino at any harborside trattoria.
So, you like it? But now, why don't you look even closer, my friend?
He was waiting again. So, simply to oblige him, I did look closer, and then I saw it. A large octopus sat squarely upon its bed of lobster pieces and king-sized prawns. To my best recollection, I'd never seen one cooked whole before, so perhaps this was the special touch my Italian friend had in mind. And then it happened. The creature's great saucer eyes opened and gazed balefully into mine. My God, it was alive.
Now he sees. So, how do you like my little beauty?
I'm not sure.
But I have created a new delicacy.
A live delicacy?
Alive, Vincenzo.
Between us, we will set a new gastronomic trend, you will see. Oh, purists like the Contessa may at first condemn it. A return to marine cannibalism, perhaps, eh? But I tell you, Vincenzo, and you will agree for yourself, that in the gastronomic stakes, a live lobster boat screaming to the boil will prove strictly for the peasant. Now, please. Well, taste it.
I'm sorry. At first I just thought it was some kind of a joke.
A joke?
Well, as a matter of fact, I'm still not sure if you... But it isn't, is it?
No.
I'm sorry, Luigi.
You object?
Well, simply, let's say, decline.
But why?
I can't explain.
Try. For Luigi's sake, why don't you try?
Well, even for Luigi's sake, well, I'm just not sure I can. It's something to do with the very aliveness of the thing, of course, but more than that, it's the eyes. A sort of watchfulness in the eyes.
You disappoint me, my friend. You know that? You disappoint me.
I'm sorry.
You object. But you cannot even begin to explain why you object.
Luigi, please. Vincenzo is your guest.
For which I'm sorry. Because not only does he show a singular lack of adventure, but because he stupidly finds the dish somehow objectionable on humanitarian grounds. True or not true?
True.
But why? The oysters you love, are they not live? A well-known scientific fact. All sea creatures are impervious to pain. Any 10-year-old angler will tell you, my friend, they have no brain, no mind, no nervous system, let alone the so-called finer feelings which you and the Contessa would seem to attribute to them. Apart from which, the pathetic specimen you see before you is itself possessed of those same cannibal instincts which you now accuse me of possessing.
I accuse you of nothing, Luigi.
Hourly sucking into the disgusting chasm of its stomach a million tiny sea creatures. To first digest, and then spew out the remains which are neither palatable or necessary to its uniquely selfish existence.
Except that you have overlooked one thing, Luigi.
Huh?
We have no way of knowing. In spite of the sworn word of any 10-year-old angler, we have no way of really knowing whether the creature we see squirming in front of us is capable of feeling or not.
Knowing, my dear Contessa, what is there to know?
Everything. Anything. Simply because, perhaps, it chooses to reveal nothing. We shall never know. Not unless it were possible for one of us to take its place. At this very moment. To be on the receiving end.
Permit me to produce the evidence.
With a single deft, circular movement of his knife, Luigi removed one of those enormous eyes. The creature attempted vaguely to scale the deep sides of the dish, but at last, realizing there could be no escape, floundered back, stonily regarding Luigi with its one remaining eye. The mucus from its socket mingled now with the rich Madeira of the sauce that had replaced its natural element. Luigi regarded it dispassionately, then flicked the eye on the heavy silver of his embossed plate. That evening, over after-dinner brandies, my squeamishness turned to embarrassment. An apology seemed in order, and I was happy to provide it.
But, my dear Vincenzo, there is nothing to be forgiven. Unless it is the weather. More brandy.
Oh, thank you.
I had planned on taking the launch to show you a few of the night spots across the bay, but I'm afraid until the storm decides to blow itself out...
Think no more of it. I'm really perfectly happy.
Which is a good deal more than can be said for the Contessa, I think. Isn't that so, Caro?
Oh, if you say so, Luigi, then I suppose it must be.
But you've hardly said a word since lunch.
Haven't I?
You know you haven't.
Oh, then I can only blame the storm. You know they always give me a headache.
Oh, but please. It isn't that I mind for myself so much. But as you were so quick to point out, Vincenzo is a guest.
Please, Luigi.
A minute ago, you were asking forgiveness of me. For a brief interlude, the storm was being blamed. But now, it is I who am expected to ask forgiveness of the Contessa. Such webs we weave.
But there is nothing to forgive, Luigi. Unless it's...
Unless?
Unless it is that it's late and I'm tired. Vincenzo, I shall leave it to you to discourage Luigi from throwing himself overboard. But I really would like to retire for the night.
Oh, but of course.
So soon, Contessa. The night is young.
No, dear Luigi. The night is never young. It is the same age at its birth as at its death. It is we who must inhabit the bright lights of day. We grow old. As old as we are allowed to grow. Good night.
Good night, Contessa.
A cigar, perhaps?
Oh, I'm sorry, Luigi. I wasn't...
Now you're doing it again, my friend. Apologizing for one thing and overreacting for another.
Am I?
Yes, you are overreacting to my Contessa. But then you have been all day.
Well, then I certainly didn't intend to.
But found it impossible not to.
Well, it is late, Luigi.
You see, my friend, the effect she has on us is infectious. Not only the personification of a mood of her own, but the creator of moods in others.
Oh, please, I only meant it's been rather a long day. But if you'd rather...
No, I insist. Whatever our mysterious lady claims to the contrary, tomorrow is another day. We shall welcome it together.
Well, good night, Luigi. By the way, it's macabre of me, I know, but what did happen
You want to know what happened to our one-eyed sea monster?
Yes.
Thrown overboard with the rest of the garbage? Oh, not out of any finer sense of returning it to its own. I do assure you its remains will attract the other sea creatures. The cycle of cannibalism perpetuates itself. Besides, it makes for excellent fishing. If you promise to get up before noon, I'll get one of the crew to fix us up with a couple of lines.
Good night. I lay in my cabin listening to the storm. It was strange how deeply Luigi's mood of the evening had disturbed me. The extrovert, arrogant Luigi. And then it had been a long day, so sleep now, gently, gratefully, into sleep. sleep. Sleep.
Isabella? Isabella, mon amore. Is that you? Oh, Isabella, don't tease me. No, please don't, Isabella. Oh, my God. No. No. Oh!
It was the steward, Carlos, who found him. But having seen what he had seen, he would not again venture into the cabin. Straddled grotesquely across the bed, in a splatter of torn flesh and blood, was the thing that had been Luigi. There were the marks of giant tentacles about the dull, snapped head. The tongue rolled gigantic from between those swollen purple lips. But overall, there was the unmistakable evidence that the whole head had been somehow, inexplicably, pulped outwards, as though it had first been sucked in under some enormous, unnatural pressure, fed upon, and the remains spewed out again onto the fine linen of those monogrammed pillows. But not all spewed back, not all totally discarded. For when I could bring myself to look at the thing again, there was no mistaking the fact. Only one of Luigi's eyes stared back at me. The other socket lay seeping, empty. The Contessa was standing at my side.
How do we know they have no feeling? How do we know they are not capable of understanding and of revolt? And if revolt, why not revenge? A revenge to be fearfully enacted by others of their own kind. Larger, stronger, more terrifying than anything we dare imagine. There is no evidence such monsters do exist. But is there any proof that they do not?
I looked away from that single cyclops eye, and leading from what remained a trail of slime, much like the slime of some enormous slug, I followed its course. It climbed the French brocade wallpaper, shattered the high chromium finish of the porthole, crossed the deep teak polish of the deck beyond, and from thence it slimed down the hull. The spume of it still floated out there, oil-like, on the calm waters of that beautiful Italian bay. Then it descended eternally into the dark depths that lay beneath.
That was Vincent Price bringing you The Price of Fear, with Roger Snowdon, Anne Jemison, and Christopher Bidmead. An Eye for an Eye was first recounted and dramatized by William Ingram.
The Price of Fear. Vincent Price presents Dilys Lay, Sylvia Coleridge, and Norman Bird in Is There Anybody There? By William Ingram. Vincent Price.
Hello and welcome. In Arcadia Avenue, the houses have names as well as numbers. Shangri-La, Dun Roman, Mont Repose. They best sum up the avenue's air of nostalgic gentility. Built in the early 30s, all is very discreetly orthodox, from the privacy of privet hedge and lace curtains at the front to the squares of handkerchief-sized lawn at the back. In later years, however, professional nameplates have appeared on several of the front gateposts. Brigadoon now houses Chetney, Chetney, and Chetney accountants. Dun Roman, complete with monkey tree, a veterinary surgeon. Higher up the avenue, there is an establishment for the fitting of ladies' foundation garments. But it is to the recently renamed Celestina that our attention must finally turn. The first thing one notices is that its brass nameplate is somewhat grimier than the others. It pronounces Miss Griselda Thorpe to be medium and clairvoyant, consultations and ministrations strictly by appointment only. Every Wednesday afternoon, promptly at 3 of the clock, Mr. Henry Jollett climbs the gravel path, presses the front door bell button, and anticipates, at the going rate of 1 guinea per session, yet another preview of eternity.
Ah, my dear Mr. Jollett.
Miss Edith, I trust I'm not premature.
No, quite the contrary. Punctual to the very second as usual.
Punctuality, my dear Mr. Jollett, the prerogative of kings. In my books, whatever, or anybody else's for that matter. Edie!
Yes, Griselda?
Stop catching blue bottles. Assist me with the sacred pendant.
Yes, Griselda. I can't quite seem
Fingers
to...
and thumbs, fingers and thumbs. There. Mr. Jollett, drill as before, if you please. You there, in the hot seat.
Thank you.
I shall sit here, with my back to the window. Better for vibes and less chance of spiritual dispersion, don't you know? And Edie, you... Edie, where have you got to?
Here, Griselda. I've been here all along. Really, I have.
But I don't want you here, dear. I want you there, in the third chair.
Of course. How silly. There. You can begin now, Griselda.
Thank you, dear. We will join hands in a circle of eternal light and harmony. Well, do it as though you meant it, woman, for heaven's sake. Hands, harmony. The man's not a flat fish.
Oh, yes, Griselda.
Peace. Perfect peace. Peace. Perfect peace. Peace.
It started, Mr. Jollett. You can always tell when it started.
Are you there? Are you there, O mighty Manco Capac, Emperor of the Inca, beloved of the sun?
Her spirit guide, you know.
I have had the pleasure.
Speak, O mighty one. Is there anybody there?
He's there.
Speak. Speak.
It is I, Manco Capac, Emperor of the Inca, beloved of the sun, God living, God incarnate, God of the infinite orb.
This is where her breathing gets heavier. You'll see.
Speak, O Manco Capac, Emperor of your peoples, spirit guide to lesser mortals, bound in bonds of common clay.
Above the land of Cuzco, the condor flies high in search of the lamb that has strayed.
Oh, dear.
Our fields lie fallow, our storehouses empty. The living seed of promise has burnt itself to husk.
I don't like the sound of that at all.
Prepare then, my people, prepare ye. Climb, oh, climb thy temple mountain. Anoint with sacred unctions this our human sacrifice. See, oh, see where the living god of the orb, the chariot of the sun, spins gold upon this holy place. Raise high the sacred blade. The time of the living blood is upon us. The time is now. Now!
Edie, stop daydreaming and pass Mr. Jollett the last of those chocolate digestives.
Oh, yes. Mr. Jollett?
No, thank you, Miss Edie.
Oh, well, piggy to the trough, I'll have it. Edie, while you're on your feet, you can put Capac's sacred pendant back in the casket where it belongs. There. Beautiful, isn't it, Mr. Jollett?
Beautiful. Quite beautiful.
I'd let you take a closer peek, but I don't think the old boy would go for that. Even letting Edie get her chocolatey little paws on it is stretching the point. But at least in the family, if you take my meaning.
Of course.
Oh, at least let me top you up.
I beg your pardon? Oh, no, thank you. It's most kind.
Ah, downhearted. I don't blame you. 3 Wednesdays in a row, and still no contact with the dear departed, eh?
Not yet, Griselda. Though the Emperor did seem to have rather a lot on his mind.
Oh? I rely on Edie to keep me in the picture, you know.
Huh?
Have to, don't I, old thing? Once his nibs takes over, out of my hands. Everything up to him, and when it's all over, the old memory slate wiped clean. Just like it had never happened.
But you must have some idea.
Griselda did try getting it on tape in the early days.
Tried's the word.
Oh?
Not a sausage. First couple of times, just put it down to Sister Edie making her usual bosh of it.
Griselda!
Well, not exactly of a mechanical bent, old thing, let's face it. If she ever got around to fixing a fuse, she'd probably blow up Battersea Power Station.
So, what happened?
Happened? Nothing. Funny thing about it, though, all the early stuff, us getting settled, the odd bit of traffic noises from the avenue, Edie's ridiculous asides, all clear as a bell. But the minute Manco Capac starts doing his stuff, nothing.
Perhaps you were too far off the microphone.
No further than any of the others. And from what Edie tells me, his nibs is not exactly the sotto voce type.
Not exactly.
Still, 3 weeks on the trot and still no contact with the dear departed. If he doesn't pull his finger out soon, you'll be asking for your lolly back.
Oh, dear lady, it never entered my mind.
Odd, though.
Odd?
Don't have many failures, do we, Edie, old thing?
The first I can remember, Griselda.
If your dear departed wife...
Violet, Griselda.
Violet, quite. Well, old Manco Capac can usually be relied upon to winkle them out. Not that there'd be much persuading needed, mind you.
Huh?
Or put yourself in Violet's place. Like being told there's a long-distance phone call, not even bothering to find out who's on the other end.
I never quite thought of it in that light.
I wonder what light you had thought of it in, Mr. Jollett.
I notice you've been admiring my sister's portrait, Mr. Jollett.
What? Oh, yes. It had rather caught my eye.
Splendid, isn't it?
Edie.
Oh, but it is, Griselda, dear. Such an excellent likeness.
Give or take 20 years.
Oh, such fire, such expression.
Indeed.
Cleopatra, don't you know?
Oh, really?
Not the old Vic, Mr. Jollett. Finsbury Park Empire. What they call in the business A bum week. Not the title role, either. Though that's clearly the impression my sister wishes to give.
Oh, but...
Fa-ta-ta-tita. Fa-ta-ta-tita, fa-ta-ta-tita, fa-ta-ta-tita. Trusted and rather boring handmaiden to the Queen, don't you know? She's the one that brings that awful rubber snake on at the end. The trickiest part was getting the name right. Fa-ta-ta-tita. I still have nightmares.
Painted by a fellow artiste, Mr. Jollett.
Better at painting than acting. But then everybody in the company seemed better at something than acting.
Of course, I had realised your background was probably theatrical.
Only probably. Oh, my dear man, such understatement.
That isn't to imply...
The ham of all hams. Always was, always will be. Why, I eventually had the good sense to give it up. Anyway, 20 years on, water under the bridge, and sure you must have better things to do than gawp at pathetic shortcomings of an aspiring Sarah Bernhardt.
How interesting.
Mr. Jollett?
How very interesting. 20 years. You did say 20 years.
Give or take. Why do you ask?
In the painting, you're already wearing the sacred pendant.
Am I? Oh, yes. Yeah. So I am, aren't I?
Griselda's feeling of being caught out did not escape either Edie's or Mr. Jollett's notice. To begin with, Griselda half choked on her chocolate digestive, then lapsed into a granite-like silence, which made the gentleman shift uneasily on the edge of his seat, drop a spoon, and finally invent a previous engagement, and so beat a grateful retreat.
Griselda, what are you doing?
What does it look as though I'm doing? I am having myself a gin.
But you've just had tea.
They can fight it out between them.
Griselda.
Matter of fact, I'm going to have 3 gins.
But isn't it a little early to
From
start?
where I'm standing, it might already be a damn sight too late. Well, why the hell don't you join me?
No, thank you.
Suit yourself. Oh. Own damned fault.
Pardon?
Should have cottoned onto the blighter long before this. I must be losing my grip. Was a time I'd have got his number before he got his size 10s over the front door mat.
Are you referring to our Mr. Jollett?
Jollett. Jollett. I wonder how long it took him to dream that one up. Or perhaps his super-duper pulled it from a hat.
Super-duper?
Superintendent, dear.
What?
Police. Fuzz. Oh, God knows why I didn't tumble. What did he say that ridiculous wife's name was again?
Violet.
Violet Jollett. Well, have you ever heard anything more unlikely? Who in their right mind would ever want to be supernaturally reunited with someone called Violet Jollett?
Mr. Jollett.
Hocus pocus, pudding and pie. Not that she ever existed, but like somebody opening the second half in old-time music hall. Oh. Violet Jollett and her performing love doves. Osprey feather at the tilt, and her feathered friends dropping bird muck all over her velveteen and diamante ball gown. Not to mention half the stalls.
I'm still not sure I follow you, Griselda.
Well, God knows how much clearer I can make it. Phony, through and through.
Ah, Mr. Jollett?
And for God's sake, stop calling him that.
And Mrs. Jollett, too.
Well, how else was he going to get himself over the front door?
Oh, but if our Mr... Well, the gentleman isn't what he pretends...
I thought I put you in the picture. He's either one of the plainclothes brigade or a hack.
A hack?
A scribbler.
A scribbler?
From one of those dreadful Sunday rags. All turge and true confession.
Well, he doesn't look like a newspaper man.
You've never seen a newspaper man?
No.
Well, then. They're not all trilby hats and dirty trench coats, you know.
No, I suppose they can't be.
Still, had it coming.
Had what coming?
On the cards. That one day I'd probably get myself splashed right across the front page of one of the Sunday Dreadfuls. Real life expose, life after death racket, the sinister truth, You know the kind of thing. And one of those dreadful photographs they always find to go with it. Out of focus and slightly blurred around the edges.
Griselda, dear, it wouldn't be true anyway. Would it?
So what the devil do you think I've been prattling on about? The big phony. Always knew it, so now it's out of the bag. Good run for our money. Our money, Sister Edie, but over.
I don't believe you.
Then turn a blind eye. Again. Your option. Always been your prerogative in the past. True. Always true. Turn a blind eye to whatever you can't take. For you and Mumsy and dear dead Papa. The whole ridiculous charade of Arcadia Avenue. Over. Done with. Kaput. Thank God.
Your spiritual gift.
Phony as hell.
You made it all up?
All of it.
Not Manco Capac.
It had a ring about it. Not the kind of thing they'd be likely to find in the telephone directory.
But I heard him, Griselda. Your spirit voice.
A fair stab at one, even if I do say so myself. First tried it out when I was playing one of the three witches in the Scottish play. Closed after 3 nights. Theatre Royal, Hanley. Little did I know years later it might still have its uses. By the way, did you notice how your Mr. Jollett turned somersaults when he heard of my theatrical associations? It must always be a bit of a giveaway, I suppose.
He was admiring the pendant, Griselda. Pendant of the Emperor Manco Capac, ruler of the Incas, from out of the land of Cusco.
Spirit guide of lesser mortals, bound in the bond of common clay.
Oh, dear.
Sorry, old girl. Bosh. All bosh. God knows where I even picked up that worthless bit of scrap iron. Probably with the rest of the junk in one of those 6-penny trays.
I see.
Edie?
No. Just a bit of a headache. An early night. I'll take one of my pills. Well, perhaps even 2.
What about your Biddy Buys cocoa?
No, thank you, dear. I don't feel much like it tonight. No, not tonight.
We have no way of knowing how long it was before Griselda followed Edie up the wooden hill. Gin had always been her tipple. It not only relaxed her, it gave her a warm feeling of righteous self-pity. And if she wasn't entitled to a large slice of that tonight, who the devil was? She could have been asleep for hours. She might just have closed her eyes. She lay fully clothed on top of the bed. She was perfectly aware of the distant town hall clock and that damn Ginger Tom making its caterwauling next door. She was cold, reached down to pull the heavy eiderdown about her, but her hands lacked the strength, her intention, the purpose. She was pinioned, but not only by physical force, as though by hypnotism, behind her eyes, dragging her backwards through time, place, to a scene she seemed to know, recognize, as in a dream. But a dream that was about to become her reality.
Hearken then, O sacred children of the sun, let it be known through our Incan land that her denial of us, of our blessed sacred symbol, shall be
be moved. See where it beats even now upon the altar of our forefathers. Even now. Even now. Even now. Even now.
It was always Edie who coped with the ritual of early morning tea. She'd carefully avoid Griselda's pom-pommed carpet slippers, then set the cup gently down on her bedside table, draw her curtains to exactly the width she demanded, and then shake her gently, but firmly, by her shoulder, until she got the first grunt of awakening and recognition. But no grunt came. It took Edie a long time before she finally would accept that Griselda was dead.
Oh,
Miss Edie.
But it's not even Wednesday, Mr. Jollett.
No, it isn't, is it? May I come in?
I don't know. Are you alone?
Of course.
But only for a minute, then. It's a terrible mess. I'd offer you some tea, but I'm not really up to it.
Oh, I quite understand.
Do you?
I only called to offer my sympathy. If there's anything...
How did you find out about my sister's... Miss Griselda's passing?
A small paragraph in last evening's paper.
Oh. But only a small paragraph, you say? Oh, I'm not sure she'd have been too happy about that. Notices, even the obituary kind, were very important to her. Banner headlines, a photograph, a bit out of focus, blurred around the edges, was the way she put it. When I opened the door to you just now, I quite expected popping camera bulbs and a Black Maria. I'd almost hoped for it.
I'm not sure I understand.
There's really no need to keep up the charade, you know. No need at all. Now, Mr. Jollett.
I see.
Oh, she saw through you all right. Right from the very start. Edie, she said. Edie, dear, the man's an imposter. Jollett. Such a ridiculous name.
Isn't it, though?
There never was a late Mrs. Jollett either, was there?
No.
She roared her head off at that. Like somebody opening the second half in old-time music hall. She roared her head off at that.
How else could I have got to see her?
False pretenses.
It was important to me.
So why assume a false identity?
Oh, no, the identity at least was my own. I do have a card.
Professor Henry Jollett.
The letters will mean nothing to you.
The National Institute of History.
Ancient history. South American, to be exact. Specialising in early Incan cultures.
It really means nothing to me, Mr. Jollett.
No.
But, for what it's worth, I'd like you to explain.
Where to begin? Just by chance, the wife of an associate put me onto your late sister's activities.
Oh.
Forgive the scepticism. I'd never ventured into the spiritual world, but that didn't prevent me thinking I'd heard it all before. The substitution of an Incan emperor instead of your usual Indian chief gave it a certain twist. But I really had no intention of coming until I found myself here.
Go on.
It wasn't until she summoned the emperor by name I started to take an interest.
Ah, yes. Her great Manco Capac.
Not exactly the kind of name you find in a telephone directory, is it?
It's why she chose it, Mr. Jollett.
Made it up?
If you like.
Except that she didn't. Manco Capac. the predestined one, founder of the Inca dynasty, bearer of the staff of gold, protector of the family and the hearth, founder of the city called...
Cusco.
Exactly. Well, she could have researched it, of course.
Except that she didn't.
No, she didn't. As I listened to her, there were many details of the emperor, his fort city at Cusco, that no amateur, that even I, after a lifetime of study and only now beginning to alight on, a new world, long dead, but through her awakening again with a vigour and intensity I could never have aspired to. And yet I doubted. Right up until...
Until?
The very last time, in this room, we were having tea, and then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted it. Final proof of all I'd been so stupidly sceptical about.
Her portrait?
And about her neck, the royal seal pendant of the Incas.
You'd seen it before?
Only in the gloom, at a distance across the table. She'd refused to ever let me handle it. But suddenly, here in her portrait, 20, 30 years earlier, a very competent artist with all the time in the world to capture every detail. Will you permit me to see it? The pendant?
If you wish it. She was wearing it when I found her. The clasp was broken, as though it had been torn from her neck.
The autopsy was a necessary legal formality. In view of her age, excess weight, some kind of heart condition seemed the likeliest bet. In the antiseptic whiteness of their 20th century morgue, they made their preparations. A few know-it-all students jostled for a better view, sniggered at her large whiteness. There were no scars on her body, not even an appendectomy. But when her cadaver was eventually opened, they found no heart, only the severed aorta and the cavity where it had once lain. Miss Edie was offered a fortune for her pendant. She refused to sell it. It's now on permanent loan to Mr. Jollett's museum. She often drops in to see it, and there's usually tea and chocolate digestives in his office afterwards. And she's never taken down that brass nameplate on the gatepost. Consultations and ministrations strictly by appointment only. Whenever her finances get a bit tight, she consoles herself that she can always take up where Griselda left off. And why not? She does have connections in high places.
That was Is There Anybody There?, starring Dilys Lay as Griselda Thorpe, Sylvia Coleridge, Edie, and Norman Bird, Mr. Jollett. The Price of Fear was presented by Vincent Price, written by William Ingram, and directed by John Dias.